that question. Yes, we absolutely do agree with that.
In September, an article in the Globe and Mail exposed extensive network of Chinese police stations operating not only in Canada, but also in other democratic nations around the world. And we also know that the Government of Canada had to limit the Chinese Communist Party's use of Operation Fox Hunt in 2015 due to fears that it was used to intimidate dissidents in Canada. So I guess my question to you is, what measures are your organizations taking ongoing to monitor this threat, and how, I don't know if you followed the line of questioning I had in the previous, with the previous guests, but 17 million Canadians cast a ballot in the last election. The difference between a majority Liberal government and a minority Liberal government was 13, and the 13 closest ridings was a mere 20-some thousand votes. And I guess I'm going to ask you, even though this might not be directly related to your mandate, but do foreign state actors, which I think pose a different threat than third-party funding coming from other countries, can foreign actors move the needle 20 to 30,000 votes during a federal election campaign?
Perhaps, Madam Chair, I can begin and certainly turn to my colleague as well for any comments Alia may have. Thank you for the question. If I address the initial question about the overseas police stations, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I can't go into the details, the operational details of the service's work, but I can say that we're using all of the authorities that we have to look at any potential threat to our communities. And it is very important for us to be able to ensure that our communities in Canada feel protected and are not the victims of any threat action towards them or any foreign actor trying to threaten them or their families back home, which we know is of concern. And so obviously this remains a priority for us. In terms of foreign state actors influencing any elections, I'm not at liberty to say whether or not certain numbers could be influenced that way. But what I can say, and as we have said in our public reports and through other venues, we are very concerned about foreign influence activities against our democratic institutions, against our elections, and we do see these activities increasing. So it is working with our stakeholders and other Government of Canada partners to increase the awareness about this threat.
In 2019, it was discovered that a spy from the Chinese Communist government was recruited to run a constituency of an Australian parliamentarian. And despite our geographic distance from China, there are worries that China interferes with our politics here domestically, of course. I'll use an example, former Ambassador John McCallum's intervention on behalf of Meng Wanzhou, as well as China praising Canadian senators that voted against the Uyghurs genocide motion. So I guess I'm going to ask you, are there current parliamentarians or senators, or are there volunteers in various campaigns, or are there staff members working for members of Parliament or senators that Parliament should be made aware of, that it could potentially be compromised? And if there are any, how would you communicate that, and who would get to know that?
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned in my opening comments, we are very concerned about the targeting. We know that there is certainly a desire to target elected officials at all levels of government, municipal, provincial, federal. And we do work at providing defensive briefings and are certainly encourage individuals who have any concerns or questions to reach out to us, because we do engage quite a bit in stakeholder awareness and in defensive briefings when these types of concerns are raised.
In order to mitigate, sorry, Ms. Tayyeb, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No, I just thought that what I would do is I wanted to echo what Michelle was saying in that regard. We work very closely, and we did, as part of the site task force as well, in the lead up to the election, the 4 agencies together to ensure that we were providing regular briefings to political parties. We also work very closely with the House of Commons to ensure that any and all information that we should be sharing with them by way of threat information about foreign interference is done so. Thank you.
So given the nature of your comments, Tessier, in regards to the increased level of foreign state interference, and you talked about the tools that you have available to you, are there any tools that you, any new tools or any other authorities that you think you would need, either of you, would need in order to continue to protect Canada's democratic institutions?
We have highlighted in the past that we feel that the CSIS Act was written at a time, 1984, that has likely not kept up with the modern complex threat landscape as well as technological advances. And so we are constantly looking at our authorities and at the tools we require. One example I would give is our ability to use data and to assess data. We are in a world of increased data, and although changes were made to the CSIS Act to enable us to look at data and manage data sets, we still feel that, again, with evolving technology and our authorities, there's probably discussion to be had in terms of CSIS's ability to assess data. Another example.
Sorry, I know our time flies by so quickly. We can always, you can always provide us this information, especially when it comes to input that we should be aware of to help you do the important work that you do. Mr. Turnbull, 6 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks to both our witnesses for being with us today. Found your opening remarks really helpful. Ms. Tessier, I'll start with you. So in your opening remarks, you said that CSIS did not detect foreign interference that needed to be disclosed. And I think just going back to the critical incident election public protocol, it sounds like that wasn't used, or that, and I wondered if you could just speak to the fact that there can be a potential threat that did not meet the threshold under that protocol. Can you explain